All right. I am Eric Kane,
And I'm Paul Tassi.
and it's been a while, but we are once again back at the podcast thing. This is where we make the big bucks
By
doing
big
this
bucks, you mean
podcast.
$0, but
Yeah,
yes.
$0. This is where we spend time we could be making money, just having fun and talking about specifically The Walking Dead. Now we're doing a Walking Dead podcast for season 9. We're going to do games separately in a different podcast probably, but for now, focusing on our favorite show.
Yep. We say that sarcastically, but we do kind of like season 9 so far, surprisingly enough.
Yeah, I think the first episode may be the weakest of the 3. We won't talk details about the
So
second
to
two
set this up,
episodes, but
AMC is like pretty confident in season 9's quality, so they sent everybody like the first 3 episodes in screeners like pretty much a month early, which I've never seen them do ever. So we've seen the first 3. Did they do that before? Maybe I wasn't getting screeners previously.
So ominously enough, they did that with the first 2 episodes of Fear this last season.
Oh yeah, you're right.
It was about a month early, at least, because I totally broke it on accident. Yeah, I know, they were really good.
Actually really good.
That's what scares me, because the first 2 were good. I think we should take a moment, just a very quick moment, just to bemoan how terrible season 4.
Oh my god, that was so bad. I've been so disappointed, and like it makes me look like an idiot because I spent all of season 3 being like, no, it's good now, I promise. Like this is actually a good show. It's better than The Walking Dead. And then season 4 came along, and outside of maybe like 2 or 3 decent episodes out of like 16, everything else was terrible. And they have like Morgan leading the show, and this trip where they're going to come to Alexandria, and then now they're not. Like, just kidding. And and they killed Madison and Nick, and just some of the worst creative decisions I've seen in the history of that show, history of either show, honestly.
Yeah. The only forgivable thing that you just mentioned is Nick, because Frank Delane wanted off the show. Their hands were tied.
I'll give them that. I mean, it was just bad timing because they also killed Madison. But like, if they knew that in season 3, which apparently they did, like, don't kill Madison then. Change your plans. Have Nick be the one who dies at the end of the season. Like,
such an easy. But the thing is that, they wanted to get rid of her as the lead and put Morgan as the lead. And it's just the most bizarre decision.
Yeah, I don't get it. If you're going to get rid of her as the lead, which A, you shouldn't, B, make Alicia the lead. Like, duh. She's the best asset of the show. And shoehorning in Morgan. Like, I was okay with Morgan joining the cast. Like, I thought that could have been okay. But him just like taking over and dominating with his, little Morganisms and making everyone pacifist and this and that. Was irritating. But that's actually something I like about season 9 so far, is this real kind of more realistic push and pull of like, how do we do criminal justice in this new world? And like, when is corporal or capital punishment okay? And like, that's kind of the theme that we saw with season 9 premiere, and what we will
like, how do we get along after the war, which is a question that's always follows war, like with Nazi Germany, how do the Allied forces deal with this country that was just so terrible? And one thing that I think that they've really screwed up is they haven't prosecuted anybody for war crimes. That's something that had to happen.
They don't have a real judicial system yet. It's just like Rick being, well, this is what I want to do with Negan. It's a life sentence. Like, the end. I'm Rick. And then Maggie's like, I'm Maggie. I want to hang this dude who attempted to kill me. The end. And like that, like everyone's kind of doing their own thing. And I think at some point they're going to have to hammer out some actual rules as to, because this is just people kind of, it's still martial law essentially, or like borderline anarchy with like a couple major leaders. So that's going to have to change if they're going to make this whole actual society thing work.
I hope that all of these communities kill each other so that we can have a smaller cast again, because it's just ridiculous how many characters we have to follow.
Yeah, I will say I liked that at least everyone was kind of together in the premiere instead of like, oh, this is going to be the Hilltop episode. I mean, maybe they'll go back to doing that, but I thought they did a pretty decent balance, like Game of Thrones style, of like touching base with almost everybody.
And I'd say that continues through, this isn't really a spoiler. I think that continues through the first 3 episodes that we've watched.
It does.
Where not only that, but where characters that we really care about are getting the most screen time. You know, like there was very little Eugene or Tara or those guys. There was a lot more Rick, Carol, Daryl, you know, more
The
main
main
character
players, yeah.
focused, which I like. I mean, it's not completely that because there's some other stuff that happens that we won't talk about, um, but there is a. I feel like in the show in the past they just spend so much time on, like, they spent so much time on Eugene, for instance. They actually gave him one of the more interesting arcs in season 8, I think. But they just spent so much time with him, and it's like, get back to, like, give Daryl some lines, damn
Yeah,
it. You
yeah,
know? And they are doing
and
that.
they did. Look, you know,
Yeah.
Daryl's a regular chatterbox. I read all these interviews with him, and it's hilarious. And he's like, "Yeah, the past couple seasons, I didn't really have to do much." And he's like, "Now, he's like, I'm talking my ass off. This is ridiculous."
Yeah.
But I mean, you can
It's
tell he
so
loves it.
good. Yeah.
No, and the stuff
It's
they're
just
giving him is good too. It's not just like
Mhm.
Grr, Daryl wants revenge. It's like no, he's making like legitimately good points, and you know his conversations with Rick. Like I'm on his side of like kind of the Rick
Oh yeah,
Daryl Maggie
definitely.
debate. Like Rick is being pretty naive to my estimation.
Well, it's because Carl wants it
Oh God, don't get me
somehow.
started.
See, here's part of the problem coming into season 9 is that they mangled the last 2 seasons so badly that we have this unrealistic, like, vision that Carl had. This is what Carl wanted. It's like you just gave it to him all of a sudden and then killed him. Like, that wasn't like Carl's character. That wasn't where he was at. They just made that be. I mean, that was like Morgan's vision,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly. Yeah, that made
But
no
no, let's
sense.
that will make it Carl's. It's so stupid,
And I'm
horrible.
now that Rick's leaving, like I'm firmly of the belief that Rick just should have died the way Carl died, and then Carl just should have been
Uh-huh.
leading this season. Like that
Yep.
would have been perfect. I mean, not perfect because I don't really want Rick to die anyway. But if it had to happen, that would have
Right.
been much better. And like I mean, I guess we're seeing the show go forward without Carl, but then seeing it go forward without Carl and Rick is going to be really weird. Where
Really
it's just
weird.
like
It's
Daryl and Carol. And like even if you know they're better written, I still think the show would be better off, you know, with Carl having a more major role if Rick's gone,
yeah.
or obviously Rick staying if that were possible. But so I'm still a little like, despite the positive things I've seen, I'm still a little nervous about how this is going to go and how they're
Mhm.
going to handle Rick's death in a way that isn't very annoying, like Madison's death was on Fear.
Oh yeah.
Because they try to make
It's gonna
that
be
like
hard
this
to top
big
that.
heroic sacrifice thing too, or it was
So
supposed to be like a
stupid.
worthy end, and it was terrible. The whole thing was terrible. So
Yeah,
I don't know if I trust
they
them.
only got she got killed because Nick and Alicia didn't drive the car across the parking lot. Literally, that's why.
Yeah,
Like, and then Alicia was mad at June for nothing. It just was so. The new showrunners should be fired. I'm just gonna straight up say that, and so should Scott Gimple because he is just like, I don't know. Their decisions for that show were so bad. It went from a very very strong season 3 with still some of the stupid Walking Dead stuff that we always see, but it's
hmm
still a strong season, and then just they just destroyed the show. I mean, you see it at like the subreddit for Fear the Walking Dead. People were just
yeah, very
up
few
in
people are defending
arms.
that show. The brigade, the
Very
biggest
few.
brigade I see now are the like Madison deserved better people,
Yeah, yeah,
which
totally.
are
Yeah, that
everywhere.
was
And I agree with
bad.
them. I mean, you know, I don't
Yeah.
believe in harassing writers or whatever, but like they're right, and that was a terrible Carl level decision that Fear made. So
Yeah, yeah, it was. I mean, and it was cheesier than Carl's death too. At least Carl like
yeah,
didn't
at least
go
Carl's
like
death was
slow
well
mo into a
handled.
building.
Like that, I
Yeah,
hated that it happened, but the way they did it was actually kind of nice. But
yeah.
oh, God,
Well, this premiere was good. It was strong compared to what we've seen. There were a couple very, very, very stupid moments.
which
The
moments?
glass, the
Yeah, that
glass
was a little
breaking, that whole
contrived.
thing was
I mean,
utterly
there had to have
ridiculous.
been better ways around that. Like, I just can't buy that
Yeah.
that was the only way to transport that stuff out of there. I,
Well, and also there was the railing they could have handed things over,
yeah.
for instance, except for the big cart. Also,
Why do
that
they
none
need
of
the
the
big cart?
stuff.
Like, just take a photo
I
of it
don't have
and
any
build
idea.
one.
They already
Like,
have a cart. Yeah. Yeah, it's just silly. I mean, and that kind of glass is so strong. None of that stuff would have broken it. If they did want to have like a scene where it broke, they should have showed it like already like pretty cracked when they got there or
yeah, and like
something.
the problem with that scene was like you knew what was going to happen. You knew someone would slip through it and
Of
be
course.
dangling, but you knew they probably wouldn't die. And when it was Ezekiel, I was like, okay, there's no way Ezekiel's going to die here. So it wasn't
Yeah.
really even tense.
Well, that scene and the scene where they're on the road and the kid gets killed. that was also an incredibly stupid scene because there was not that many zombies. They ended up killing them all anyways. Why were they running away and leaving their horses? I mean, forget the cart, but the horses are a seriously valuable
Well, that's why the
asset.
kid
You're
died,
not going
because
to
he was
just
trying to save the
leave,
horses,
right?
which
So
everyone
he
should have
goes
been
and
trying to
tries
save the
to
horses.
exactly, and also they should just not have had that scene because it was ridiculous. And what should have happened is if anyone was going to fall through the glass, it should have been that kid, and he should have gotten eaten by zombies
Yeah,
right
that would have
there. It
been
would have been
better.
a
I mean,
gruesome and horrific scene, and we would have avoided all that other stupid moment. There's just those two moments that really like thorns in the side of that
I
episode. Everything else
yeah, I
was
will say
good.
though, like the end result of the kid dying, I thought that was all very well handled. Where we
Yeah.
get introduced to this kid and his parents who we've never met before, but for being characters that we have no idea who they are, essentially, I thought the show did a very good job kind of setting up who they were, kind of their history with
Hmm.
Gregory as a leader, and like how important the blacksmith guy is to the community, and like him being a former
Hmm.
alcoholic, and like Gregory goading him into falling off the
Ugh.
wagon. Like I thought that was all very, very well set up, in
Yeah.
terms
Yeah, it
of
was
him trying to
well
get Maggie
cast.
killed. I was a little bit like when he just flat out tries to stab her after the first attempt fails. I'm like, okay, that wasn't the best plan, because like clearly that was not going to
Right.
work. But yeah, and then Maggie just buries him, just like that was probably within
Yep.
hours of that happening. She just executes him, and like I'm not in favor of that, honestly, given the context, and it
Yeah.
hasn't really
He's
made
horrible.
sense. Like the whole Rick sparing Negan thing just doesn't make sense to me. So like Maggie killed
Yeah.
him for like attempted murder when like we literally watched Negan like beat two of their closest friends to death and like kill a bunch of other people too. And Rick's just kind of content to imprison him, and he's going to escape because of course he is.
Of course.
And
Of course.
what I'm
And
guessing is Maggie will try and hunt him down, and then this isn't like a comic thing. I'm just guessing, but like, and then they'll try and execute him, and he'll escape that way or something. But
yeah.
that's what I'm predicting.
Yeah. Maybe he'll kill Rick. So I know Negan. I don't read the comics, but I know Negan does survive in the comics and takes on a more protagonist role. And I don't think that could work in the show. I just
It
don't see
doesn't
how it
really
could
work in the
possibly work.
comic either, because it's like, hey, remember your
Okay.
like rape harem? Like these are things we can't really get past. But no, Negan
Yeah.
wants to be kind of a good guy now. And if there was ever a character to redeem, it probably would have been the governor. But I don't think it works with Negan. It didn't work in the comic, and I don't think it'll really work here. Although this Negan is slightly less overtly awful than maybe comic Negan, but still killed a bunch of people in cold blood, still had a rape harem, still a lot of things.
Yeah.
So can't really
Still
get
bash
past
Glenn's
that.
head in with a bat.
Yeah.
You don't get to bash Glenn's head in with a bat and then get forgiven because Glenn was the best character and now he's
Yeah.
dead.
And like, are we
So I don't
not
I
supposed
won't
to want Maggie to kill Negan? Like I'm really on her side of this
yeah.
one. And it's weird to kind of be
Oh,
rooting
big time.
against Rick, but that's where I find myself in this
Well, yeah, I
context.
know. It is weird. It's just, I like that. I like that there's a conflict between characters
When
like
it's a
this.
believable
I
conflict,
really
it's
that's
not
what
like forced. Like it makes sense.
yeah. I mean, it's sort of ridiculous just because like Rick sparing Negan, I don't believe that that's Rick's nature. I mean, he just killed all those other saviors like with Morgan in the bar.
Yeah,
Remember
yeah.
that scene? They were like helping, they like freed them, and he was telling them they could come back to the community, and then they just
Carl, man,
straight up
Carl
killed them
had
all.
his road to Damascus
But
moment. Well, it's interesting because
but
the
it doesn't
original
make
the original
sense.
justification for the Carl death was that the same thing happens in the comic where Rick goes from like a warlord to sparing Negan, and the showrunners were like, "Well, that doesn't really make sense. Like, there's got to be some sort of like turn there." And their answer to that was like the Carl thing, but that obviously didn't make sense for its own reasons either.
Yeah.
So it still wasn't, it didn't solve that problem either way. And we lost Carl, so it was
Yeah.
worse.
Well, it's definitely on the up and up as far as I can tell. I'm worried, of course, because Fear seemed like it was going to be good, and then it was crap. And
Yeah.
it's not like the new showrunner is new. Like she's been around since season 2, but I do feel like she's bringing some new style to the show. Not just better like dialogue and stuff, but just better cinematography, more variety in the locations where we
Yeah,
see
and
people.
the opening scene where it's just Michonne and Rick playing with Judith, I thought was really well done. It's
Yeah.
like an introduction to kind of like peacetime, and I don't think that's something Scott Gimple ever would have done in his
No.
tenure. Like I don't think he would have crafted a scene like that.
Yeah, moments of like
It's kind of like
tenderness
little
and
things,
stuff.
but they all add up.
Yeah.
And we'll get to this when it happens, but like we can talk about this off camera with spoilers. But like I really like episode 3. I think episode 3 was fantastically done.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of
Very good.
excited for people to see that one because
Yeah.
that has a lot of interesting things that happen and some interesting answers to questions, and the way it was sort of handled and the emotional weight of some stuff is very good. So I'm excited for 2 weeks from now.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a ways out. I'm gonna have to rewatch both number 2 and 3, I think,
Yeah, I
before.
rewatched the premiere yesterday just to
Yeah.
refresh myself. But
Well, they blur together a little.
yeah,
For
episode
sure.
2 was okay. I don't remember anything super significant from it, but I'll have to rewatch it.
I sort of feel like the first episode had like some of the biggest stuff happen, and also kind of the most annoying things, like those scenes we just talked about. The other two, they're just kind of like, I was never sitting there like, oh, can't believe they did that. That's so dumb. That's so
Yeah.
So that's good.
I will say I'm kind of sad about that the whole DC excursion just ended up being just to get that stuff. I was like, oh, I thought this was going to be like a whole arc, and
yeah,
because I was like, oh no, DC is just empty. There's literally no one in DC. Okay, sure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's odd, but okay.
Yeah, I wish they had done more with that. They need to see, because that's another thing. Like, that I worry about. I worry about the cast being too large, for one thing, and there's just so many communities.
Yeah.
And then I worry that we're just going to be stuck in those static communities too much. Like that's why I was looking forward to the DC arc, because, well, I thought it would be an arc also, because getting out on the road is sometimes the most fun we have.
They made it sound like that was kind of what was going to happen, and Daryl literally even says that this episode. He's like, back when we were the small group, we could do anything, and he's like, now it's different. Like, you changed everything. And he's right, and I think we are going to see at least some more of that. I don't think we've seen it in the next 2 episodes that we've seen, but they did make it sound like that was going to be more of a thing.
Well, I hope so, because I think
given what happens, the next 2 episodes, I can kind of see where maybe this is going. But eventually we do have to get to the Whisperer arc, but that might not be until the very end of the season.
Right. Yeah, I hope they don't rush right into another round of villains either, because some of the best conflict is not between the group of good guys and a group of bad guys. That can get really tiresome. We've done it already so many times. We've had the governor, we've had Negan, we've had multiple small groups of enemies. Sometimes it's more interesting to have a conflict like we have now between the good guys and each other.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely the most interesting conflict we had in forever. And like, I don't want them to start killing each other, but like, I think it's good for them to butt heads.
Yeah, definitely. And for things to go wrong because of it. Like, that's what I don't know. Like, I just feel like the last 2 seasons have had they've just been pointless. They could have done it all in 8 episodes. Seriously, Negan could have killed Abraham and Glenn, and they could have had their war, and it could have been done halfway through season 7, and we would have lost to nothing except for a whole bunch of bad episodes.
I really liked a lot of filler in there. Keep the episode with Ezekiel and a couple of the war episodes, and you're done.
Yeah. I mean, so much of it was, I mean, they just, we had Daryl in prison there.
God.
Then we had
Daryl in prison for
Sasha
one episode.
in prison there. And then we had, and we had Eugene go over there. And
Gabriel
then it's
Eugene,
like, oh my God, this is so ridiculous. The best episode with the Saviors, I think, still was when Maggie and Carol were captured by that group of Saviors.
Yeah, the bottle episode. That was good. That was really good.
It was very good.
I forgot that was even the Negan War. That was so good. I thought it was like the Wolves or something.
Yeah, no, it was before I think it wasn't it before we met Negan? It was right after they had attacked that outpost.
Was it season 6?
Yeah, season 6.
Okay, that would explain it. That's when the show was still good.
Yeah, well, it had a problem. Season 6 is when we started to get some big problems.
Yeah, I mean, season 5, I think, was the peak, and then season 6 was...
Season 6 still had the worst set of episodes, which was the fake Glenn death. I still think that ranks as among the very worst of all the show's history, because it was so skeezy and awful.
Yeah,
and then they kill him for real. Ugh.
I can't even go into that again.
All right. Well, we'll be back next week with another podcast with our reviews and think pieces and all that stuff too at Forbes.
Yeah.
It snowed here this weekend.
It snowed here. It's like
It,
90 where I am in
it
Ohio. That's
snowed
crazy.
6 inches on the mountain. Yeah.
I would die.
It's our heater's out too, so it sort of sucks.
Oh,
It's like, why is it winter already? What's going on? I live in Arizona. What's up with
yeah,
this?
that's crazy. I'm in the Midwest. I get it, but no, we have a heat wave here, so
Yeah.
good
Well, we
times.
had that. There was that Hurricane Rosa, and I
Mhm.
think some of the outskirts of that weather kind of hit us. But yeah, it's nuts. All right. Well, yeah. Let us know what you thought of the season premiere, and we will talk to you guys next week.